This is gonna be the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Do you know how to ride one of these?
It's 1 down and 5 up.
Gotcha. Clutch is on your right.
It's right here, right?
Yeah, clutch is, yeah. Clutch is on the left, yeah. And then,
Not gonna lie, this is
and then front brake.
Front brake. Front brake. Got it.
oh, oh.
We gotta adjust the preload.
Oh, you better crank it up all the way.
Don't burn my hand, man.
What's to do with your brake? Your brake. That's good, that's good. I don't want too much preload.
Hands getting tired.
Get down. Get down. You gotta get it. Man, you're kind of heavy. You gotta get it. Man, you're kind of heavy.
What?
No sudden weight shift. You're not recording me, are you?
What?
Better not be recording me.
Yeah, I'm recording.
Why?
Because you're going on YouTube, man.
I'm not going on YouTube.
Yeah, you're going on YouTube, dude. Absolutely.
I'm not going on YouTube.
Yeah, you're going on YouTube, dude.
No way.
It's a sweet bike, huh?
I've never ridden one. Alright.
You should try riding one solo next time.
At least you can give a review of the back seat.
I prefer a sissy bar.
We interrupt this normally scheduled Fat Bob review for a public service announcement. If you're going to ride with a passenger on the back, I highly recommend looking into the hold-fast docking hardware. That allows you to put a sissy bar or a rider backrest on the back of your Fat Bob so that your passenger does not slip off. It also greatly increases the comfort that your passenger is going to experience while they're riding with you, and the probability of them riding with you goes up dramatically as well. Let me show you what's available for the Fat Bob. So this is the hold-fast system here. It allows you to install a luggage rack, backrest combo, or a tour pack on some models, not the Fat Bob however. This is your upright right here. You're going to want to get black to match the rest of the bike on a Fat Bob. And once the pad is on your sissy bar as well, it's going to look something similar to this right here. If you're going to ride with a passenger on the back, I would highly recommend this. Like I said, the likelihood of them riding with you again goes up a lot, and they're just going to have a more enjoyable ride experience with you. Harley-Davidson makes a specific pad that matches the styling and the stitching detail on the Fat Bob. So you can get this pad right here. It's going to blend in and match your rider seat really, really well. Now we're going to go back to our normally scheduled program. What's up guys, Matt Laidlaw here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. Been in the LA area selling Harley-Davidsons now for over 60 years. So today I'm going to be doing a review and a test ride on the 2019 Fat Bob. So there was a huge change last year in the 2018 model year, as I'm sure most of you know. So some of this information will be kind of a review from last year when I reviewed the Fat Bob. This is one of my favorite bikes, so I always enjoy myself when I take this bike out. But hopefully I can give you guys some more finer details on this bike and maybe teach you something that you didn't already know about the Fat Bob. And I'm going to kind of compare it to some of the other models that you're probably going to be shopping this bike against. I'm going to be going out with Andrew, and we're going to be taking out the Street Bob as well. And so, you know, there's a couple different bikes that we can compare this to. I did a video at the beginning of the year on the FXDR, which I think is a model that is also a high performance category within the Harley-Davidson lineup. And so I kind of already compared the FXDR to the Fat Bob. So we're going to take the Street Bob out and kind of compare the two. You know, they are quite a bit different price points, and the Fat Bob has a lot more performance-oriented features about it. When compared to the Street Bob is kind of your lowest price tier bike within the Softail family, and the Fat Bob is near the top of the price tier. But they are kind of a bobber, and the style is somewhat similar. But yeah, and it kind of appeals to a similar customer in my opinion. So we're going to take these bikes out and yeah, tell you guys what we think about it. Alright, so let's jump into this. This is a 2019 Fat Bob in the 114 cubic inch. You could get this bike on both a 107 and a 114. However, as a side note, Harley-Davidson just discontinued production of the 107. So moving forward, all the Softails that were offered in either or are only offered in 114 now. So I really like the styling on this bike a lot. Like I've mentioned before, the Fat Bob is my #1 favorite bike within the Softail family. So the best way to kind of describe the influence behind the styling on this thing is it's kind of a Mad Max meets like a zombie apocalypse type of a styling with a little bit of like dirt tracker influence in there as well. And for whatever reason, Harley-Davidson handpicked the Fat Bob to be kind of like their Halo performance model. It has things like dual disc brakes, inverted front end, a taller shock in the rear for better ride comfort and better lean angle as well. Smaller pegs again to get through the turns, the canyon carving a lot better. Higher premium wheels as well. You got laser etched graphics on the rim as well. Here's a shot of the dual disc brakes. You got ABS on there. ABS is standard 4-piston caliper, and you've also got a unique tread pattern to just the Fat Bob as well. So Harley-Davidson definitely spent some extra time on the Fat Bob, kind of making it their all-in, very unique type of a bike that's kind of a styling point that I feel like they kind of stepped outside of their normal box on. I feel like initially you either loved it or you hated it. I think a lot of people liked it, but a lot of like the hardcore like Dyna Bros and things like that didn't really like this style at first, especially the headlamp. Personally, I love it. I think a lot of those guys that initially didn't like it are kind of coming around now, though. I will say the headlamp to me kind of mimics the style of like the LED light bar that's kind of a popular accessory in the aftermarket world right now. But you know, of course, Harley-Davidson integrated into the front with the nacelle. It makes it look a little bit more finished, more factory-like, which I really like a lot. Here's a shot of the Milwaukee 8. The Milwaukee 8 engine came out in the 2017 model year on the touring bikes exclusively, and then when Harley-Davidson changed the frame on all the Softails and Dynas, combining them into one like frame, that's when Harley-Davidson applied that Milwaukee 8 engine to the Softail. So this is the second year in a row that we've seen the Milwaukee 8 on this new Softail platform, 114 cubic inches, that equates to about 1860 cc's, for those of you who prefer metric. You've got this bronze finish on the header pipes as well, and this upswept exhaust is unique again to the Fat Bob, one of many characters that just the Fat Bob has alone. You've got forward controls on here as well, real small pegs again to increase the lean angle on the bike. But yeah, I really like this bronze finish on the exhaust. I really like just the overall look of it as a whole. Fat Bob is the one bike where the catalytic converter is in the head pipe as opposed to the muffler like the other Softails in the lineup. Again, you have a one more thing to make the Fat Bob unique. You've got this riser on here that's kind of this cutout riser. Again, kind of looks more aggressive. Real clean styling on the tank. You got kind of this asymmetrical graphics where you got Harley-Davidson written on the side on the left. You've got the bar and shield outline on the right. I think it's a really clean look. I really like the direction that Harley-Davidson's going with their style lately. You've got kind of a little measurement in degrees if you want to rotate your bars to fit like the ergonomics of your hands and wrists a little bit better. Here's a shot of the instrument cluster, real simple. So you got the RPM and analog, and then the rest, like your speedo, is all digital, and you can cycle it with this upper left hand button on the left hand side to cycle between like your odometer, your trip meters, your remaining, how many gas you have left, your clock, and then you've also got an RPM, digital RPM gauge as well. And again, you've also got the RPM in analog form as well. Tank is a 3.5 gallon tank. It's a smaller tank, which is kind of a criticism that a lot of people want to point out on this bike and the Street Bob as well. A lot of guys don't like the 3.5 gallon tank, but me personally, I feel like that fuel capacity is kind of appropriate for the use that Harley-Davidson intended this bike to be. Look at all that space there between the rear fender and the wheel. So you got a taller shock on this. We measured it here at the shop, about 12 3/4 inch on the shock length. You've got an external preload adjuster here. Several of the bikes have this on here. You got this, the Sport Glide, the Heritage, and the Fat Boy have this external knob that adjusts the preload. So for anyone who's like below about 200 pounds, you're going to want to take this all the way out. But if you're going to ride two up like my dad and I, you're going to want to really dial that in to set the sag properly. But you know, going back to the shock real quick, that's one of the main things I love about this bike. I really like the taller shock. Like I said, the 12 3/4 shock on this. The only other bike in the Softail lineup that has that is the Heritage, and the other bikes are all about 12.5 inches. Here's the seat. The seat, really good detail on it. It really keeps you in place. Really good grip on the seat. I really like the pattern, the detail, and the stitching and everything. You got a side mount license plate on here as well. Got a good combination of, you know, textured like wrinkle black and chrome highlights on the engine. Got the 114 display on the derby cover there. Again, you got forward controls on this bike. A lot of guys ask me about fitment questions. You know, I will say the forward controls on the new Softails don't stretch you out as much as the forward controls on the old Softail frame. For whatever reason, maybe they're not as long, but you know, I feel more scrunch on this Fat Bob than I did on the old style Fat Bob, which by the way, if you've been following me for a while, I've always said that the Fat Bob of old was the #1 most underrated, underappreciated Harley-Davidson in the lineup. It's funny because even though this bike is completely redesigned, I would say that this bike fits that category just the same as the old Fat Bob did. This bike is so underappreciated. I freaking love this bike. It rides good. It looks amazing. Yes, it costs a lot. I think that's probably the #1 criticism. A lot of the guys that this bike appeals to, maybe the younger guys that are just getting into the Harley-Davidson world. I know a lot of the baby boomers hate this bike and wouldn't even sit on it. But a lot of the guys that this bike does appeal to feel like maybe can't afford it. But if you can swing it, guys, for, you know, $100 or so above what a Street Bob would cost, I would take this bike all day long over the Street Bob. That's not to discredit the Street Bob. The Street Bob's a badass bike, but the Fat Bob, just between the cosmetics of it, all the detail in the wheels and the bars, and the headlamp is badass. I prefer the Fat Bob as well, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with Andrew as well on the Fat Bob. Riding them back to back, there's some things that really kind of, you know, shine through with the Fat Bob as well. Just the braking, you got the dual disc brake, and just it bites really good, and the fact you have a 114, just you got that better roll-on power, especially at highway speeds where it's really noticeable. Like I said, the lighting is a little bit better, and so yeah, there's just a lot of things I like about the Fat Bob more than the Street Bob. But again, the Street Bob is nice. It fits a certain niche with, you know, someone trying to get into that lowest price tier within the Softail family and still get a really cool look, and I feel like the Street Bob really delivers that in a big way. So let's just jump right into this. Who would I recommend this bike for? This is an intermediate to advanced rider bike. Someone that likes to hit the twisties, someone who likes to hit tight urban areas, someone who just likes to put the bike through the paces. Maybe you're someone that grew up riding sport bikes. You're thinking now you want to get into the Harley-Davidson world, maybe slow down a little bit, but add all those elements that make Harley-Davidsons really fun bikes to ride and own, the customization opportunities, the mechanical nature of them, just that Harley rumble and American engineering and appeal to them, which Harley-Davidson delivers in a big way. So if you want that combined with a bike that you can ride hard and it will perform for you, the Fatbob is a really good option for you. Seems like pretty much every video I get asked the question, is this a good beginner bike? No, it's not a good beginner bike. Can someone learn how to ride on this bike? Sure. But for me, this doesn't make a whole lot of financial sense to spend about $20,000 on a bike that you probably end up dropping, because everybody who learns how to ride a motorcycle inevitably is going to drop it once or twice. And it's a bike that it's like buying a 16-year-old like a Porsche. It looks cool and they're going to feel good about themselves on a nice car, but are they really going to be able to get the full benefit out of how well that vehicle performs? No. Same thing with a beginner on the Fatbob. You're not going to be able to ride it to its limits. And I'm not saying every bike needs to be ridden to its limits to enjoy it, but if you're a beginner and you want to get the Softail, you don't want to start with the Sportsters, then maybe a Street Bob would probably be better. Again, you're not buying a bike that to really appreciate the motorcycle, you got to be a good rider. I would say on a Fatbob, you got to be a pretty decent rider, like I said, intermediate to advanced rider, to really appreciate this bike and everything that it has to offer. A couple of things that Andrew and I both immediately found out about this bike when we got off it, and to really compare it to the Street Bob, is the suspension is far superior on the Fatbob. You have, like I said, about an extra 1/4 inch of travel in that shock, which if you account for just the mechanical leverage and just the way it's set up with how the spring attaches to the swing arm, you're adding about 3/4 of travel to the suspension. And just everything from the freeway going, we took the bike up to about 80 miles an hour, the freeway hitting the bumps to hitting the turns. You got better leaning on the Fatbob than the Street Bob, so you're scraping peg quicker on the Street Bob than the Fatbob. And just the overall ride comfort out on the freeway was a lot better on the Fatbob. And I'll say that about the seat as well. Just the seat really has this really nice pouch to it where you get tucked in and you're really planted in the seat as well. The Street Bob, you feel like you're moving around and slipping around a little bit more on the seat. These bikes, since the 2018 Softail frame change, these bikes have gotten immensely better. If you're one of these guys that's just getting into the Harley-Davidson world and you're fishing around on Instagram a lot for what the cool Harley is, and you're seeing a lot of Dyna riders and FXR riders, let me just be the guy to tell you, the new Softail frame is the best overall frame. That if you're staying with the air-cooled cruisers, the new Softail frame is the best frame that Harley-Davidson has ever made from a standpoint of just pure performance cruiser. We're not talking like bagger or anything. So yeah, this new chassis, the Softail chassis, is going to outperform a Dyna, hands down, no questions. It's irrefutable. They're just way better. Yeah, if you're a new rider, you want something that's going to perform, that you can ride aggressively, the new Softail chassis is really good. And that's on both. That's across the field, any Softail you get. Now, obviously, the Fatbob adds a lot of elements like the braking, the inverted forks, which are really nice in turns, by the way, and the improved lean angle. That if you're really putting the bike through the paces, you're going to see an improvement over the Street Bob. Yeah, and that's not to mention the brakes as well. So the brakes, one thing that Andrew mentioned right away, and I agree with him on this, is you just have a lot better bite on the brakes on the Fatbob. You got that dual disc up front. The brakes on the Fatbob are just damn good. It stops this bike really, really well. Thinking back to the 2018 model year when I first rode the Fatbob, a part of me was like, wow, I can't even believe this is a Harley. It's just, you think of a cruiser as just kind of a sleepy grandpa bike. These bikes are in no way sleepy grandpa bikes at all, which leads me to my next point. The Fatbob has the most aggressive rake of all the Softails as well. You got a 28-degree rake on this. Most of their Softails are all a 30-degree rake. And then if you go to like the Breakout has a 34-degree rake. So just the handling is just a lot more agile. I mean, this thing just, you can transition from side to side really fluidly on the Fatbob. And even with, what can be considered, relatively speaking, as fatter tires on the Fatbob, this thing just handles really, really well. And one of the traits about it as well, and I talked about this with the last Fatbob, it's can be kind of held true with this Fat Bob as well is there's a lot of symmetry with the front and rear wheel, which helps out a lot with handling. And you have smaller wheels. I believe these are both 16-inch wheels. And you got quite a bit of rubber, so yeah, the handling is really good. The ride comfort is very good. You know, taking the bike up on the highway, you just feel a lot more solid and isolated from the road on the Fat Bob than I did on the Street Bob out on the freeway. And so better lean angle on the Fat Bob, better high-speed freeway riding and comfort on the freeway as well. So let's talk about the weaknesses of the Fat Bob for a second. One of the things I always tell people or ask people when they walk through the showroom floor is what type of riding they have done in the past and what type of riding they plan on doing with their new Harley-Davidson. And if it's getting on the bike and going with your buddies to Las Vegas or on long trips, then the Fat Bob isn't a bike that I'd recommend for you. And you do have the restriction of the fuel capacity. Like I mentioned before, you got about 130 miles to a tank on there, give or take, depending on what type of riding you're doing. But also the rake on the Fat Bob as well, with that, you know, more aggressive rake on there, rake and trail. It's not the best for a straight line for long distance at high speeds. It'll do it just fine. It's not a problem. But one of the things that's nice about your traditional cruiser is you have, you know, a more of a raked out front end that gives it more of that, you know, real relaxed, calm handling and steering out on the open road. And so for that reason, you know, the FXDR, if we're talking, you know, Harley-Davidson's, you know, two bikes that they've postured as performance bikes, the FXDR does a little bit better out on the highway. So let's talk about the FXDR for a second. So the FXDR has a really fat rear tire. You got more of a radical rake to it as well, and you have a disproportionate front and rear wheel. For those things that I just said, that and having those attributes in the FXDR handles very well for having those things. The Fat Bob is going to outperform the FXDR in its totality. The FXDR, I feel like, launches off the line a little bit quicker. I think that's mostly due to the increased volume in the airbox. Yeah, through the twisties and in the canyon roads, the Fat Bob is going to pretty much dominate it. And if you want, check out my FXDR video I did at the beginning of the 2019 model year. That might clear up a little bit more questions and comparisons between the FXDR and the Fat Bob. And me personally, I think the FXDR looks pretty badass, but I still prefer the styling of the Fat Bob. I think it's more of a youthful, modern styling in the Fat Bob. The FXDR, I think that's going to appeal a little bit more towards, you know, guys that maybe in the Midwest or maybe the you know, Gen Xers, baby boomers that really are into drag style bikes. But it does have a modern twist on it as well. So, you know, a lot of it just comes down to preference. Yeah, a couple of things that Andrew said as well. And Andrew has ridden, you know, a lot of different bikes. Super Duke, he's on R1. Yeah, he's a really strong rider, especially through the canyons and things. You know, one of the things he mentioned as well is how the brakes felt. The brakes feel really good on the Fat Bob. And it's funny because a lot of people complain about the lowrider and the Street Bob not having dual disc brakes. The new modern brakes, those 4-piston calipers, they do very, very well. And it's not until I ride both of the bikes back to back that I can tell that the Fat Bob does stop better. And the lean angle, you know, I tried to, you know, take the bike down, you know, pretty close in the lean angle. I didn't want to scrape or anything, but, you know, without even trying, you can pretty much scrape on any Softail in the previous Softail frame. These new Softails, you know, you've got quite a bit more room where on the typical turn you're not going to scrape, and you really got to put it through the paces if you want to scrape in a turn. Yeah, as far as customization goes, if you guys haven't already, check out the Battle of the Kings. A lot of the Battle of the Kings entrants use the Fat Bob as their choice of their starting blank canvas, so to speak, for that contest. We use the Sport Glide. If you guys haven't checked it out already, check out our Coast Glide. The contest is still going on. Thank you everybody who voted for us in the People's Choice. We won the People's Choice Award. But enough of that. So yeah, you have a lot of options with the Fat Bob as far as customization opportunities. There's a lot of aftermarket companies too that are coming out with things like exhaust and bars and grips and things like that. We've done a couple club style Fat Bobs that turned out really, really nice. Hard Case Performance has a really cool bar setup that you can put on this bike. So customization opportunities are definitely out there for the Fat Bob. So you'll definitely get that benefit and that aspect of Harley-Davidson ownership with that. But yeah, other than that, you know, the Milwaukee 8 too, you know, is definitely a big advantage of the old Dynas and Softails. You have a reduced weight on the new Softail frame as well by about, on average, about 30 pounds. And the Milwaukee 8 has more power and runs cooler as well. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate you watching the video. If you have any additional questions that I didn't cover please hit me up in the comments section. I try to answer everybody's questions. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. One thing I noticed is only about 10% of the people that watch my videos are actually subscribed to me. So if you watch my videos often, help a brother out and hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if I was able to help you out. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care. If you have any requests on future videos that you'd like to see me do, or maybe my next review video, leave that in the comments as well. I look at all the comments, guys, and if I see reoccurring comments, I either address those comments or I make those videos and do the requests. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.